My stepsister ran off with my fiancé just a week before the wedding, and she sent me postcards for months afterward. But karma is a real thing. I'm 28 years old and had been engaged to my college boyfriend for about 4 years. We'd been together throughout college and got engaged when I was 23. We were engaged for a year, but a week before our wedding, he left me for my stepsister. My ex-fiancé, Greg, who's 28, and my stepsister, Melissa, also 28, eloped a week before we were supposed to get married, leaving nothing behind but a letter for me. In that letter, Greg explained he'd started an affair with Melissa a couple of months after we got engaged. He realized he couldn't marry me because it wouldn't be fair, not to me or to Melissa, since they were the ones truly in love. He said he believed the universe had used me just as a stepping stone to bring him to his true love, so he couldn't go through with our wedding and keep deceiving everyone with the idea of a happy future with me. And that was that. They left, and I didn't see them again until recently. Greg's parents covered the entire cost of the wedding, so I didn't have to pay a thing, because they were so embarrassed by what their son had done. That pretty much became the last time I interacted with his family since we had nothing else to talk about. However, my own family was more than embarrassed. My parents were furious. My dad even started considering hiring a private detective to track them down and bring them back for some answers. Just so you know, my dad is actually my stepdad, but he's been my dad since I was very little, and I've always treated him that way because he's the only father I've ever known. I never met my biological dad. My dad left our family shortly after I was born, and my mom never saw him again since she had given up her rights to me, and they never married. Later, she married my dad when I was 8. Melissa and I went to the same school, and that's actually how our parents met. But for some reason, Melissa decided she didn't like me and then started treating me badly for the next few years. She was a real bully, and she and her friends constantly picked on me at school. It didn't stop when we got home. She kept looking for ways to make me feel miserable. I complained to my parents several times, and they tried to scold her, but it wasn't enough because she wasn't even afraid of them. So, she kept harassing me, and my school years were a complete nightmare because of her and all her cronies. Just as my dad wasn't around much, Melissa's mom wasn't in her life either, but that was because her mother had passed away a few years after she was born. Her mom died suddenly in the middle of the night from an epileptic seizure. So every time my mom tried to discipline her, Melissa would say that she had no right to scold her because she wasn't her real mother. My dad tried to make her stop bullying me, but nothing worked because she just wasn't afraid of anything. They'd try everything, from scolding her to trying to talk nicely to her, but nothing made her stop. Occasionally, they even threatened to send her away, and she'd dare them to do it because she knew it was all empty threats. And that was just in high school. Over time, she only got worse. By the time we were in high school, she'd picked up a bunch of bad habits and practically turned into a juvenile delinquent. She started smoking and would sneak out sometimes to go drinking with her friends, who were just as bad as she was. It wasn't until one night when she, along with her friends, got arrested for breaking into someone's house while drunk that our parents finally decided to send her away to get the help she obviously needed. After weeks of pleading and protests, my parents finally got her into a rehab center for troubled teens. She wasn't happy about it, but my dad was very firm and told her that if she wanted to live with us and be part of this family, she had to get her act together, because he couldn't allow her behavior to continue, especially when it was affecting everyone else, and she was becoming a danger to society. She was gone in a huff for several years and didn't come back until after we graduated because she had enrolled in a school near the rehab center and was living with her aunt. I didn't see her during those years mainly because I wasn't interested in what was happening with my biggest bully. My parents would invite her over every weekend and ask if I wanted to come along, but I always said no. Her friends even started ignoring me and acting like I didn't exist after she left, which really improved my high school experience since I wasn't being harassed all the time. Melissa continued her education in rehab and eventually returned. The first thing she did was apologize to me for everything she'd put me through. She seemed a bit calmer, and I honestly thought she'd changed for the better, so I forgave her. Anyway, we were about to head off to college in a few months, so it didn't really matter. Once we started college, I moved away and so did she. We'd come back for the holidays, and she was much kinder to me after that. And by kinder, I don't mean that she was really nice, just that she ignored me instead of tormenting me at every possible opportunity like she used to do. Honestly, that change was very welcome because I'd rather be ignored than bullied. Our parents noticed the change, but they didn't try to force us to be best friends or act like sisters, because given our history, that was more than enough. Then I started dating Greg, and after a year of being together, I decided to bring him home for Thanksgiving to introduce him to my parents. Everyone got along really well, and for the first time, I even noticed Melissa was interested in the conversation, which was a rare thing since she came back from rehab. She and Greg really hit it off, and after I started dating him, she began showing more interest in being friends with me and would often come up to me just to talk, something she'd never done before. I understood what was going on and had a little suspicion that maybe she had feelings for Greg. So one day, I asked her directly if the real reason she was trying to be friends with me was because of Greg or something like that, because I was paranoid. She laughed and told me that wasn't the case, but that Greg had mentioned he had a good relationship with his siblings during our first dinner together while he was talking about his family, which made her rethink the way she'd been treating me since coming back. So now she was trying to fix things and improve our relationship. It wasn't directly because of Greg, but he definitely played a role as a catalyst that forced her to reflect on our relationship. She told me that she had blamed me for being sent away for so long, but eventually she came to accept that it wasn't my fault, and that she had gotten herself into this mess with her awful behavior. So, she figured it was time to stop punishing me for it and start really trying to be part of this family, and that wouldn't be possible until she genuinely apologized and actively worked on our relationship. I'm a bit of an emotional dummy, and what she said that day really moved me, so like an idiot, I decided to forgive her and be friends with her. And I guess that hurt the most, because she betrayed me after we'd become friends. We were on good terms for a long time, and she was actively involved in the wedding planning. I wouldn't say we were best friends, but we weren't as bad as we used to be. As we rebuilt our relationship, we'd meet up at least once or twice a month and chat. So by the time I got engaged, things were fine. Whenever we met at family events and such, she acted pretty normal, so I never suspected anything because I had no reason to. Even after the engagement, they kept acting like nothing was wrong, and for not even a second did it cross my mind that maybe Greg was having something going on with Melissa. I just never thought about it because Greg put on such a convincing act of being in love with me the whole time he was cheating on me with Melissa. And she was very convincing too, pretending to be my friend, so I never found out the truth until it was too late and they were already gone. My parents wanted to track them down and bring them back home, but I convinced them to let it go because I just wanted to forget about everything. It was bad enough that those two had turned me into a complete fool and left me 1 week before I was supposed to get married. I didn't want any more drama because I was really depressed and just didn't have the energy. I spent the following weeks doing nothing but working and sleeping because I wanted to avoid facing my feelings. My heart was obviously broken and I was just numb, but the worst was yet to come. A couple of weeks after what was supposed to be my wedding day, I got a postcard from Melissa from California. But that wasn't all, she had also used a bunch of pictures of her with Greg, and they looked really happy. It was very obvious that she was rubbing it in my face, because she even mentioned that she regretted the surprise before my wedding, but obviously she didn't mean it and was just trying to piss me off. That's when I realized she had never really forgiven me for what happened all those years ago and still considered me responsible for her being sent away. And she never really wanted to be my friend in the first place. She'd simply used me to get to Greg, and I trusted her and let her use me. It was a really diabolical plan, I have to admit. For days after she sent that postcard, I couldn't sleep at all. I was losing my mind over it. It was a truly traumatic experience and I needed therapy for months to undo all the damage and deal with my trust issues. The postcards weren't just a one-time thing. She kept sending me postcards of her and Greg for months afterward. It only stopped after about a year, because I wouldn't respond or get involved in the drama. Our parents were really upset about it, and they naturally cut all ties with her after that. They didn't even try contacting her after the very first postcard, which was a huge deal for Melissa because she was set to inherit her father's business. She was a business student, and that was part of the reason she chose that path for herself, to join her dad. But of course, after what she did, our dad cut all ties with her and told me that I could take his place instead, because he felt he had to make up for it. But I didn't have a degree in business. I was actually a history student, so I needed to learn the basics first. My dad said it was no problem because he was willing to teach me everything he knew so that eventually I could take over the business instead of Melissa. So I agreed and began working under his direction to learn how to run the business, and eventually he could retire and hand me the reins. After a while, I worked very hard for a couple of years, and last year I finally got promoted and my dad retired. It was an amazing feeling because I had started from scratch and had to learn everything, but now everything was running smoothly under my leadership, and it has been for quite some time. Thanks to me, my parents can now spend more time together without worrying about the business because I'm taking care of it. It's been like that for a long time, and I practically stopped thinking about Greg after I started working for my dad because it took up all my time. That, along with therapy, helped me move on, and I'd say I've completely gotten over the past. I don't think about them or what they did anymore. Then I thought they'd get in touch with me again, and certainly not ask for my help because that would require a lot of guts and a complete lack of functioning brain cells. To ask me for help after cheating on me, making a fool out of me, and then rubbing it in my face. But I guess Melissa and Greg really lack functioning brain cells because they reached out to me a few days ago. I was at home since it was the weekend, and around lunchtime, I heard someone frantically ringing my doorbell. I knew it was the pizza I had ordered, so I didn't think much of it. When I opened the door, I got the biggest surprise of my life when, instead of a delivery guy, I found Melissa standing outside my house, looking really distressed. I didn't know what to say, so I just waited silently for her to speak while I looked at her. I realized she was definitely there to ask for help because she looked terrible. Her appearance gave it away. Even as a kid, Melissa always dressed well, but when I saw her, she was wearing old, faded clothes that obviously had been bought a long time ago. Her jeans were too short, and she looked like she hadn't eaten in a while. I had already decided that whatever it was she was about to ask me, my answer was going to be no. She said she needed me to help her because she'd been struggling for a long time ever since he lost his job a couple of months ago, as he had started drinking instead of looking for a new job. And although she'd been trying to find a job for herself, she couldn't because she had left everything to stay home and handle all the housework when she first moved in with Greg. Because of that, she hadn't worked recently, and the gap in her resume made her a poor candidate for all the jobs she'd been applying for. She said she'd heard from a couple of relatives that our dad had retired and passed the business on to me, so now she was here to ask if I'd be willing to hire Greg and give him something to do. She told me that she had come all the way here just to ask for help and said she regretted what she'd done in the past, but now she was counting on me to get her out of a jam. She said she hadn't even approached our parents yet and had come straight to my house for help because she knew I had a kind heart, and she felt terribly guilty for betraying me in the past. But she was sure I wouldn't say no now that she needed me. Her sense of superiority was so ridiculous that I ended up laughing in her face and told her to look elsewhere because I don't hire cheaters. Then I shut the door in her face and went back into the living room, preparing to call the police if she didn't leave my property soon. Luckily, she left that day, but she still hasn't left me alone. After her visit, the first thing I did was call our parents and tell them what happened. They said they'd heard from a couple of neighbors that Melissa had come back to town without Greg, but they hadn't believed it. And since we live in a relatively small town where everyone knows everyone, we quickly found out that Melissa had been here for about a week before she finally came to visit me and had been living with one of her high school cronies. It was probably her high school friend who had told her where I lived, as well as that I'd inherited the business that should legitimately have been hers, and now she was really taking advantage of that. A couple of days after she visited me, she decided to go see our parents to tell them just how far gone she was. She had expected them to side with her now that she had the upper hand of who was suffering more. But she couldn't have been more wrong, because my dad told her that the business was mine to run now and that she had no voice in the matter anymore since she wouldn't be supervising me. And my mom reminded her that she was the one who betrayed me by running off with my fiancé after pretending to be my friend for years, and now she completely deserved what she was getting. She had lost the right to ask for help from any of us, especially from me, after tormenting me with postcards. She tried to defend herself by saying that it was all in the past and that she was a different person now, but our parents told her she had to leave because they didn't want anything to do with her. That led her to throw a tantrum at home and claim that I was always favored over her, that I was treated like the golden child. She told my dad that, despite being his own flesh and blood, she'd never been treated that way and that he acted as though I were his only daughter while she was worth nothing. When he told her that he'd made more concessions for her behavior in the past than any other parent in the world would have, she said it still didn't matter. I had everything she was supposed to have, including that business she bragged about. She said it wasn't even her fault that Greg fell for her and wanted to spend his life with her instead of me, but for some reason, she was the one getting punished for it, insisting that the postcards she sent were a genuine apology and that she wasn't trying to torment me. And honestly, I haven't been able to stop thinking about that ever since my dad told me what she said. Somehow, it's true that she was supposed to inherit that business and take my place, but she really blew it with her own actions. I had nothing to do with it. I never told my dad to cut her out of his life and pass the business on to me. It was his decision, and it feels a bit unfair that she's blaming me for it. Plus, what she said about me being the golden child is absolutely false, but I can understand why she'd feel that way because, in her mind, she was the one sent away because I complained about her constant bullying. A parent deciding to send their child away is a big deal, and I know it was hard for my dad, but again, it wasn't his fault or mine. If he hadn't taken the necessary steps, Melissa might have ended up as a criminal or something worse, because that was the path she was on. Apart from that, I really don't think she was trying to apologize with the postcards. She was probably just trying to cover her tracks by saying it was a genuine apology. I feel bad for her because her husband turned out to be completely useless, although I dodged a bullet there. In fact, he came to me, and I can't imagine how hard it must have been for her. So in a way, I feel sorry for the way I treated her. Now I have everything, and she has nothing, so I can't help but pity her. That's just who I am as a person. Besides, it's been a long time, and I don't feel I should hold on to that resentment anymore. But I also don't want to help her in any way. The most I can do is feel sympathy for her, but I really don't want to hire or give her money. I think it's enough that I even feel sorry for her after everything she put me through. Most people probably wouldn't even bat an eye. The only reason I even feel pity for her right now is because that business should really have been hers, and now that I'm in a position of power, I'm finally getting even with her, and it just doesn't feel right. Maybe it's because of what she said about me being the golden child, or maybe it's just a case of imposter syndrome, but I feel weird about it. So, am I the idiot for refusing to hire my ex-fiancé who ran off with my stepsister now that they're both struggling financially and need help? Before continuing, don't forget to subscribe. New stories every day. Update 1. I had no idea what to do, and the comments here only confused me further because some people said I was doing the right thing by turning them down, while others insisted I'd always been the golden child, so that Melissa started acting out. It wasn't as helpful as I thought it would be. I decided to talk to my parents because whenever I've faced problems in my life, I've always gone to them for advice, and this time was no different. They told me I had no reason to feel sorry for Melissa since we'd all done everything possible to try to help her become a better person. But if she wasn't willing to change at some point in her life, then there wasn't much we could do for her. My dad said he totally planned on letting her run the business if she'd behaved and been a good daughter. But she failed in every way and completely made a mockery of our family. After that, it would be foolish to expect that she could ever take over or even be part of the family again. That conversation made me feel a lot better because talking to my parents always does. So I'm going to try not to feel guilty about things I don't do anymore. Update 2. It's been about a week since Melissa showed up at my door, and since her visit with our parents, we haven't heard from her again. I almost thought she'd come back with Greg until today, when she appeared at my workplace to make a scene. It was awful. She just walked in, positioned herself in front of my office, and started yelling about how I had stolen that smudge from her nose, by pretending to be the good girl for our parents and constantly flattering them so they'd approve of me. Apparently, I was responsible for shaming her by falsely accusing her of bullying me throughout our childhood, even going to my dad to have her sent to rehab, all just to keep me as the family favorite. She went on about how this business should have been hers, but now I wouldn't even let her be a part of it because she was jealous that Greg had chosen her over me. Unlike our parents, who always favored me, and since I'm not used to being overlooked, I lost it and sided with our parents against her. When I heard her screaming, I went out after calling security to see what was happening. I tried to tell her to shut up, but she kept yelling for several minutes until they finally kicked her out of the building. I called my dad before calling the police to get his take, and he was furious. He told me to go ahead and call the cops immediately. Luckily, when the police arrived, she was still lingering nearby, probably waiting for me to come out of the building so she could yell at me again or maybe do something even worse, like physically assault me. The police took her away and charged her with trespassing and disturbing the peace. Those are minor charges, so she'll probably just end up with a fine or maybe community service at worst. But it'll be on record, and that's never a good thing. I told my dad that she'd been arrested, and I expected him to be really upset about it, but he just seemed exasperated and said he was tired of this drama and needed a break from dealing with her madness. Honestly, I feel bad for him because it can't be easy having a daughter like Melissa and taking the blame for everything that goes wrong in her life. Even though, most of the time, it's her own fault. We've all been incredibly patient. Update 3. Well, I think Melissa has gone back to California because it's been a couple of days and we haven't heard a peep from her, which is odd since we were expecting her to lash out after her arrest. But my dad asked around, and apparently a couple of people saw her heading for the bus station the other day, so I guess she's left. Honestly, it's such a relief she's gone now, because I was really afraid she'd try to do something explosive to get our attention next, and that's always bad news. I don't know what she's going to do now with all the Greg drama, because it seems unlikely she'll get help from anyone else after all this. I hope she finds a way out of this mess and turns her life around. And no, I'm not being nice or compassionate right now. I have very selfish reasons for saying this. I know that if she doesn't find a way out, she'll just come back here with Greg to hassle us even more, and I don't want that. So honestly, I just hope and pray that either she or Greg finds a job so they can support themselves. Either way, I haven't heard from her for a couple of weeks now, and I'm so relieved that this nightmare is finally over.